Let's get into some LSU football, Mario. Tigers opened as a 3.5-point favorite over Kentucky. That's now down to 3, so a little bit of action coming in on LSU. And it's one that the Tigers really, really need. It's when you look at the gauntlet they have coming up, of course, the road trip to Kentucky, back home against Florida, to Oxford, and then to Bye, and then to Bama. Is it the most gettable out of all of them? I mean, maybe on the surface it seems that way. I know Florida's had their struggles, but make no mistake about it, Kentucky's going to be a very solid test for LSU.
Yeah, A&M's definitely had its struggles too. That game at the end of the season looks very gettable right now. But this one against Kentucky, not so much. And from LSU's point of view, they're down right now, but consider how up Kentucky is. And we kind of joked about it yesterday, although it's not a joke, it's the reality. This is a trap game for Kentucky. This could be a tricky spot because the Wildcats right now 5-0 for just the 4th time in the last 70 years. They're 3-0 in the SEC for the 5th time ever, and they just beat a top 10 opponent for the first time since 2010. And not just any top 10 opponent, the Florida Gators, who they had not beaten at home since 1986. So Kentucky's on a really emotional high right now. They have some good players on both sides of the football, but you and I both know that they're prone to kind of play down to the level of their competition at times. And that was apparent a couple of weeks ago when they almost lost to Chattanooga. And even in this game against Florida, they had a lot of problems on offense. Still won the game, made a big play on special teams and a punt block. Jaquez Jones, the former Ole Miss linebacker, makes the game-winning play to deflect the pass away in the end zone. But Kentucky is going to be lit on Saturday, and let's see if LSU, who's already struggling, is going to be ready for that environment.
You're going to be walking into a bit of a madhouse. Something that's interesting about Kentucky to me, though, is obviously the addition of the passing game now to their offense. They have the leading rusher in the SEC right now in Chris Rodriguez. That's probably not very much of a surprise, especially considering you watch how Kentucky's offense has looked the past few years. They've had great running backs. It's been very run-heavy. To say that Kentucky has the leading wide receiver in the SEC, which they do as well, that's a little bit more interesting. That's the surprise. But the addition of Will Levis at quarterback has really helped that aspect of their offense take the next step and honestly led to a bunch of their success. Now, their defense isn't bad either. They have a top 10 defense in the country, allowing only 280 yards a game, and they are extremely salty against the run.
Yeah, and the big blue wall, the offensive line, that's something we talked about a lot when we were previewing the Wildcats during SEC Media Day. But you make a good point about the passing game, man. It's come a long way for those guys. And Wendell Robinson is the receiver you're talking about. He's leading the SEC in receiving yards right now, 467 yards on 29 catches and 3 touchdowns. But keep in mind, he's a transfer. He played the first 2 years of his college career at Nebraska, but he is a native, not of Lexington, but he grew up like 20 minutes away. And he liked what Mark Stoops and those guys were doing down there. And he complements what's already a really good rushing game. As you mentioned, Chris Rodriguez, the leading rusher right now in the SEC. So I think Levis is still kind of getting his chemistry down with some of his other receivers because outside of Robinson, they have not been very productive. Outside of him, they don't have a receiver inside the top 15 as far as receiving yards go in the SEC. The next closest is Josh Ali, who only has 248 yards on the season. So this is an offense that's still getting comfortable, but when you can build around Wendell Robinson and around Chris Rodriguez, you're going to have a lot of success, and the Wildcats have done so.
So obviously it was a major talking point yesterday, and it will be really for the entire week. It has been for the entire season, but it's LSU's running game. And, I mean, look, they kind of hit rock bottom Saturday against Auburn, did they not? I mean, LSU completely stopped trying to run the ball in that game. I know you ended up with 26 carries, but about, 13, 15 or so, those were actually called runs. So it wasn't a very focal point of their offense. I know, Mario, we talked a lot about wanting to see how that play calling would go against Auburn, especially on first down, because if first down efficiency, staying ahead of the chain is something they talked about all week. And against Mississippi State, they ran the ball on first down damn near every single drive. I expected that to change. What I didn't expect is to see what we saw, where they just kind of went completely away from it, even when they had run looks, when Auburn's dropping 8 guys and LSU's still just trying to throw the football. So that was just not an extreme vote of confidence in your running game. You're facing a team now that is faced some good rush offenses and shut them down. I know Missouri's a bad football team. Missouri can run the ball, though. Beatty's a really good running back. The guy before him last year was a really good running back. They have been, the strength of their offense has been to run the ball. They were shut down. Florida with Anthony Richardson and Emory Jones has been running the ball on everybody, and they were shut down. So LSU, you can't run the ball really in general. I mean, I know what I compared it yesterday to a triple option team's passing offense.
Yeah.
And I stand by that. That's honestly what it reminds me of. There's no threat to it at all.
No, and I have a comparison for it today, a different comparison. The running game to LSU this year is akin to what the defense was last year. That unit is just so bad. No, the defense is an entire unit. We're talking about just one position group. But with how bad the offensive line is, it almost doesn't matter how well Josh Boutte plays. It doesn't matter how big the defense comes up in certain spots. You're going to be handcuffed as a play caller if you're Jay Peets, and you're going to be handcuffed as a quarterback if you're Max Johnson, if this running game does not come along. And as you said, I think it did hit rock bottom. I guess you can argue maybe McNeese State was the rock bottom because they had no success in that game. But I agree with you that it's Auburn, because you would have hoped that you at least saw some progress in the running game. We saw some good things against Mississippi State when they were at least able to keep the defense honest. But again, at this point, LSU's offensive line is as bad as the defense was last season.
So see, that's the problem, though. You weren't even because you went away from it so much, you weren't keeping them honest.
Yeah.
LSU's not going to go out and rush for 150 yards on anybody this year.
No.
I really don't. I really believe they're just not going to do it. They don't have it in them.
150.
But rush for 88.
Yeah.
Rush for 90. At least have a little bit of a threat where it's, they might be able to, pop one here for 11 yards, and maybe we need to at least stay back on our heels a little bit. Don't just let them cheat up all the way or completely drop 8 into coverage, and you still can't. You're not even going to attempt to run the ball. So it's disappointing. I think everybody obviously has been clamoring a lot for Corey Kiner. Hell, Mario, we started doing that after the Central Michigan game, and you still just really haven't seen him, and I can't understand why. I know Coach O was on off the bench earlier this morning, and I think it was T-Bob who asked him the question, what does Corey Kiner have to do to get more carries?
Just keep on doing what he's doing. And we talked about it, we are going to give him and Armani more consistent touches. And those guys are moving up on the depth chart fast. Just keep on doing what he's doing. And we are
Corey Kiner is not only your leading rusher, he's the only one averaging 5 yards a carry. He's the only running back that has scored a touchdown on this team.
Jeez.
Why has it taken 5 games for him to, quote, move up the depth chart? You don't know what you have until you at least try it. That was my whole argument after Central Michigan. If he goes out there against State and gets stuffed, fine. It's not going to be any worse than it was. But the fact is, each time you put this guy in, he's at least gaining positive yards. He's scoring touchdowns. He's averaging 5 yards a carry. Corey Kiner needs to be the bell cow.
Yeah, he made a great play.
Bell cow.
He made a great play on Saturday, too, on a 4th and 1 when he was met at the line of scrimmage and still plowed through to get the first down. And he's somebody who's gotten better and better as the season has gone, Musso. So I'm with you. That's one of many, many, many questionable decisions from the LSU coaching staff. But as we said, at the end of the day, the running game at this point is a lost cause. And you're asking Max Johnson and these receivers to work miracles out here. I thought Marlon Favorite made a really interesting point on Hunt and Hill show a little while ago when he talked about maybe trying some of the LSU receivers at running back. I don't know how much that would help, but you have so many wide receivers, and that way you at least get somewhat of a different look. I don't think that would solve it, but you're starting to get desperate here, as you can see. Very
desperate times indeed for LSU football. It's gonna be tough sledding this weekend, and look, bad, weird, crazy things happen when LSU goes to Lexington anyway.
Yes.
That's in, I guess you'd say, a quote-unquote normal year. This isn't a normal year. And, it's another opponent where your weaknesses just play right into their strengths, and that's not encouraging. That's not encouraging already on a Tuesday of game week.
No, I guess one thing that is a little bit encouraging is if you're an LSU fan is Kentucky will be without one of their best defensive players in this game, and that's Marquand McCall. He's a 6'3", 379-pound beast that plays nose guard for the Wildcats.
He's really good.
He goes down in the Florida game, doesn't come back, will not play in this game, and that has to be at least a little bit of a sigh of relief if you're Ed Ingram or Liam Shanahan or whoever on the LSU offensive line. They still have a really good front and a really good defense as a whole, but that'll definitely help LSU out at least a little bit going into this game.